Hey guys, welcome back to another 3D printing video. And in this video, we're going to be checking out the Creality CR-6 SE. So this is Creality's newer offerings that kind of improves on the very popular Ender 3. And Creality has been making very nice machines, and I'm definitely excited to see what this thing has to offer. So in this video, we're going to unbox it, set it up, and do some prints. All right, so let's get started. All right, so this is the box that the CR6 comes in. It's quite a nice box, and it has a picture here of the printer inside. So there's not too much information on it. So let's go ahead and open it up. And here on the top, you can kind of see how big it is with my hand on it. So it's quite a decent sized box. All right. The Creality does always a great job in packing their printers. And I really like how they use this black foam. All right, so as we open it, this is what we see. Now, the first thing I'm noticing is it looks like I'm missing the top layer of foam. So there's normally another layer here, but I guess this package didn't get it. But in any case, everything looks fine and intact either way. So first thing's jumping out at me is this box here, and it appears to be that we get a roll of filament, and it's a kilogram of it, and it's Creality branded. So it is white PLA. So it looks like it's more of an off-white than a bright white. So here we have an after-sales service card. Kind of tells you what's covered and not covered under warranty. A user manual, very nicely laid out. There's all the parameters of the printer. So the print size is 235 by 235 by 250 tall. As you can see, it's a little bit bigger than the Ender 3. It shows us all the pieces that we should be having. And here we have the installation. And there is, looks like about 6 steps. So technically this should not be hard to put together. All right, so here we have, looks like LCD screen, and it is tall, looks like. And it is enclosed in the back. Very nice design. Looks like we have part of a spool holder and a handle. And the handle is not plastic, it's actually a piece of aluminum. Very nice. Some hardware, more pieces of the spool holder. We also have a power cord, US type. And here we can see the rest of the printer. So the gantry is sitting on its side, and it looks like it's completely built. Let's go ahead and pull that out. And it's got a really nice finish to it. Everything feels high quality. And below that, we have the base of the printer. This guy is quite heavy. So yeah, that's everything for the box, and as you guys can see, it's very heavily padded everywhere. And this kind of packaging is definitely appreciated. All right, and here we have the base of the printer, and what's nice about the CR6 is that they've really cleaned it up and put the power supply inside. So this makes it definitely cleaner and more professional looking. And here we can see under the printer, it's very nice looking. I love the attention to detail on all of these panels here. Now this, what you see here is actually the tray. There's a tray in here, and it comes out right here out of this corner. And actually there's stuff in it, and it's very nicely presented. So it looks like we have a little spatula and some extra parts and tools in there. We're gonna take a closer look at this a bit later in the video. So yeah, that's just a plastic compartment for the tray. And all this you see is not dirty, it's just the mold, I guess, of the plastic. So I'm gonna go ahead and flip this guy around. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take these panels off so we can see a little better what's underneath. And while we're down here, another detail that I'm noticing is it's got really huge rubber feet. So that's really nice to see because that's gonna dampen our vibrations. Well, it looks like we are gonna go into the tray here because I do need an Allen wrench. So there's a little foam pad that holds the spatula. And check out this presentation, very nice. So we got an interesting little spatula here. Stickers, pretty cool ones. So we have a little needle for clearing out the nozzle, some extra nozzle tips, looks like clips, and a few other extra spare parts, some hardware, And there was also an 8 gig card. And it's nice to see that this printer utilizes a full SD card. And here we also have a wrench, open-ended 10 and 8 millimeter, a closed wrench, 6 millimeters, and I'm thinking this is for the nozzle replacements. Really small little snippers. That's kind of nice. I love how everything just sits in its own place. Very organized. And we also get a USB card reader for the full size SD card, and you can also use a micro SD card. And last but not least, we got our hex wrenches. This was a great little presentation here. All right, now that I got my wrench, let's go ahead and open up these panels. Okay, so all the little bolts are out, and there's 6 of them on this plate. And here we see the power supply, and it is a Meanwell 24 volt, and it's a 350 watt. And everything is organized quite nicely in here. Go ahead and take this cover off. So there's 3 bolts here, and then 1 on the other side. And this piece comes out, and there is a large fan that's connected to it. So it looks like we have the Creality version 2 6.3. So we have non-removable stepper drivers, but everything is heat sinked. Everything looks nice and tidy. And on the power supply, the same thing. Everything is crimped. All right, well, hopefully that was helpful to somebody. I'm gonna go ahead and put these covers back on. Then we're gonna flip it around and start the assembly process. Actually, before we assemble the gantry, we need to check that this bed here is not wobbling, and I moved mine around a bit and I can see that it's not tight. So looks like we're gonna have to adjust the eccentric nuts, and hopefully you guys can see they're right in there, and there's 2 of them on. So on one side there's just a hard point, and then on the other side there's eccentric nuts, and that's going to bring the wheel closer or farther away on the rail here. So it's a little bit hard to get in there because, you know, there's quite a small space here, but if it's not too small, you can definitely get your fingers in there. And I can feel on the front wheel my drag is good, but on the back one it's completely loose. So the one back there is the one I need to tighten up a bit. So I'm just gonna go in there with my wrench. I'm going to turn it just a bit, and what you want to do is you want to have barely lightly compression against the rail. If you do it too tight, the wheels will wear out really quick under there, and if it's too loose it'll wobble. But so the best way is just to grab a wheel and then turn it with your finger. If it's got a nice little friction to it, then it's good. So it looks like I need to tighten it up just a little bit more back here, and we should be good to go. All right, so that feels really good, and I've eliminated my wobble completely, so it's rock solid. And you want to go back and forth, make sure you're nice and smooth. If you feel any kind of jerking or bumpiness in the track, that means you're probably too tight. And also, while you're checking this, make sure your belts are running true on the pulleys, and if they're not, you will need to adjust that. So on this printer, the belts are actually tensioned with this little knob here. So you spin it counterclockwise, it loosens it, and then when you tighten it, it tightens the belt. But be careful to over tighten it, because this doesn't feel like you're doing much, but it's starting to get very tight here. So you want to be really light on the belt. You don't want to be too tight. It just needs to be tight enough where it's not having a slop in it. So tighter is not always better, especially with rollers and belts, but they got to be tight enough though. All right, so that feels really good. All right, so that brings us to step 1. So step 1 is going to be connecting the gantry to the base, and there are 2 M545 hex bolts on each side, and that's these in this little baggie here. So they're quite long, and there's 4 of them. And it looks like here we also have a tensioner knob that probably goes somewhere. All right, so the best way I've learned to do this is just grab the gantry and set it on top where it needs to go. Put this thing to the side a bit. And then we're going to simply grab our bolt, pick up the machine to the side, and start the bolt underneath. So this definitely works out quite good and not too hard to do, and you don't have to flip the whole printer over or anything weird like that. So we're going to run these down but not tighten them, because we got to do the other side too. All right, let's flip it around. Same here, we can pick it up and start our bolts. And we can go ahead and snug these up really good on this side. Go back to the other side and get these nice and tight. Now you might want to go ahead and go around the printer and check all the bolts, because they do tighten them up really good at the factory, but over time and also temperature changes can loosen them up a bit. So checking them is always a good idea. Make sure they're nice and snug. So one of these was quite loose. Yeah, this one's very loose. So there's 4 more on the other side, and these are very tight, so that's good. Now there are some more bolts that are underneath, and these are quite important. If these are loose, the y-axis can wobble back and forth, so definitely check these underneath and make sure they're nice and snug. So mine seem to be okay, but still need a little more tightening. And the reason you want to go through all that is because you don't want to have the machine fluctuating on the frame, because that will offset the nozzle. So you want to make sure all the frame pieces are nice and snug. And also on top, we can snug these up also. Okay, so step 2 is installing the screen. And that simply just goes right here on the right side of the printer. And the bolts can be found in this little packet. They're M5 by 10 millimeter. So we're gonna grab our screen, lay it over the channel, and start the bolts. So yeah guys, overall you can see that this printer is not very hard to assemble so far. So if you're just getting started, this would be a very friendly printer to put together. Since we are on the screen, let's go ahead and plug our connector into it. And there's just a wire coming out from the side here, and it'll simply clip underneath just like that. So for step 3, we are going to install the spool holder. And the spool holder goes on the left side of the printer if you're looking at it. And it's quite an interesting design for sure, because it is an injected molded piece. And then we also have like a little swivel, so the whole arm swivels back and forth. So quite interesting, but it looks like there's no hardware required to install this. So let's go to the side of the printer. So according to the manual, it looks like it hooks right in front of the channel. So not where the motor behind, but in front of it. And hopefully you guys can see this, but it's got a little lip here. So it just kind of clips on, and as you go down, it clips into the bottom one. So there's also a foot here that helps with the vibrations and the weight. A very nice design, and it swivels away where you can, tuck it, or it's not in the way when you don't want it. And then when you need it, open it right up. So naturally our holder will go this way towards the back, because this is where our filament will feed. So it's gonna go from here into the filament detector and then into the extruder. So naturally it'll go right here, and that's it. Quite a simple and elegant design. All right, so we're making some progress. So for our next step, we have the little handle that goes on the top. I guess you can carry the printer around with. And that's this guy here. And we're gonna use the same bolts that we used for the screen that have T-nuts. So the bolt will go through the handle, and on the other end, we're gonna start the T-nut. And same thing for the other side. And you guys can see how the T-nuts go. So what that's gonna do is it's gonna go into the channel and then spin and lock it in. All right, so we're gonna put these straight so they can go inside the channel. So we're gonna try to center it up. And so what you wanna do is you wanna go backwards a bit and then start tightening it. And the T-nut should turn inside the channel and grab it. All right, so we're gonna snug these up really good. And that's it, and now we have a handle. Now, I'm not sure how good of an idea this is to have a handle here to pick up the printer, but I guess it is quite convenient if it's on the ground. You don't have to lean over to grab it. But technically, you could just grab it around here, but they do include this little handle, and we can pick it up. So, but it does make our printer a little bit taller. So if that's an issue, you can technically not install it. All right, so since we're up here, let's go ahead and look at our gantry. So what we want to do here is we want to check all our wheels here also. Make sure they are not too tight. And we want to move this all the way down to make sure. And it looks like mine are a little bit tight. So on the Z-axis, we have 2 adjustable eccentric nuts, which are on the inside. So you're basically going to adjust them the same way we did with the bottom on the plate. You want them to spin just a bit, but not be too tight. But these are not too critical because they don't move too much up and down. Now, what is critical is the hot end. And speaking about the hot end, it's missing the tensioner. And that's this guy here that was in the bag with the bolt. And it looks like all we need to do is just install it. And I'm guessing they took this off because of the width of this thing was just too wide. So again, guys, you don't want to be too tight on that. Be very light on it. And here you can see the 3 wheels that the hot end rides on. And it's definitely too loose. It's moving around. I'll raise this up just a little bit. So we're going to grab our wrench and we're going to adjust this thing till it's right. And what we're going to do is we're going to judge it by the 2 top wheels. And we want to have just a little bit of friction and no wobble. And these look like they're perfect. So I can spin it with my hand and there's a decent amount of friction. It's still quite easy to turn, and this is where you want, because we want a really smooth motion. So for the last few things, all we need to do is plug in some connectors, and there's actually only a few. There's these 2 stepper motors. So quite simple, one here and then one on this side. And then we have a large main wire, and it has 2 plugs on it. There's one about halfway, and that one will go right here, and that's a junction box where everything is distributed to the end-stop switches and the motors. So that'll plug in right here just like that. And the other end goes to the hot end, which is here right on top. You can see there's a plug, and that just simply plugs right into there, just like that, and it clips in. Now there are some, looks like cable ties of some sort that were already on here, and I think we can just put that around the PTFE tubing, put it around it, and then twist it, and it locks it in. It's just to keep the cable from sagging, and also, you know, as it travels, they'll travel together. So all right, so that looks pretty good right there. Actually guys, there is one more plug that we need to plug in, and it's right here, and this is actually for this Z-axis sensor, and it's one of those optical looking ones, not a mechanical one. So that's interesting because the rest of them have the actual mechanical ones. In any case, so let's go ahead and plug this thing in. And that's the extent of plugging everything in. Now there is one more thing you want to check before you power your printer on, especially if you have 230 volts, is you want to see and make sure that your power supply is switched to the correct voltage in the back. So as you guys can see, mine is actually on 230, which is the wrong voltage because I'm on 115. So I'm going to go ahead and switch that to 115. Now there's less danger of having 230 than 115, because if I would have forgot to do this, my printer would just probably run funny or not run at all. Now if you're on 230 volts and you had 115, then you could probably damage the power supply and whatnot else. So it's good that it's on 230, but it's good to check, make sure you have the right voltage set. So if you look over here, you can see that there's a little blue clip that holds the coupler, and the couplers on here are actually plastic, which is interesting. And that's these extra pieces that they came with. It actually comes with those little couplers. But what I noticed is that we don't have one of these clips over here, and I'm not sure if it needs to be there or not, but I'm gonna go ahead and put one in there. And basically what that does is it pulls on the coupler, and that makes it where the PTFE tubing is not going to move very easily in and out. So you want to have this because when you do retractions, if your PTFE tubes moves with the filament, it won't retract correctly. So make sure your PTFE tubings are nice and tight. All right, and so just like that, guys, the printer is built, and we're pretty much ready to power it on and see if we can home it and make sure everything is working. But before we do that, I want to take a closer look at this thing in detail. So let's go ahead and start with this build plate here. So you guys can see that there's two latches here, and this is definitely an interesting way. Definitely not what Creality used before, but it does seem simple and robust. So when you undo these, the glass should go up. Okay, so there is a certain position they have to be in for the glass to go up. But in any case, once you get that, it does go out, and it should slide out, but it does have a hard time doing that. So I guess you're not going to be doing that all the time, obviously. So, and it was upside down. The Creality was on the other side, but the back side is just plain glass. And on top of it, it's actually a perforated build. It's something like ultra base, and it has these little dimples, so when they heat up they grab, and when they cool off the prints just pop off. So this can be a plus or a minus, and the reason it could be a minus is because if the printer is turned off during printing, you got a chance of your model popping off when it cools off. But overall, this kind of build platform is usually a huge plus because it makes printing so much easier, and prints just stick so well to it. But then when it cools off, they just come right off. All right, so I'm going to try to slide this plate back in, and this is definitely not an easy process, but it does go back into its spot, and we can go ahead and lock it in just like that, and we're ready to go. All right, so let's take a closer look at it. We'll start from the top here. So we got a handle, got a nice logo. The finish on these channels are really nice because it's smooth and it's a really refined look. So now looking on the back of it, we can see that we have a dual Z-axis leads, and they are tethered here on the top with a belt. And I really like this design because the motors on the bottom are always in sync through that belt, and that makes it where you don't have any kind of imperfections between the two sides. So that's a great design there. We do have bearings that the Z-rod goes through, and if you guys notice, the channels on the back side are also got a nice flat clean surface. So as we go down, we have the extruder assembly here, and if you see this extruder, it's quite different looking than what we're used to. So it looks like it's a different implementation of how it works, but we'll have to look into it a little bit closer. But it seems like you put your filament in there and then you lock it in, I think is what you do. And that brings the gear under pressure, but we'll check that out once we feed the filament in. And we have a stepper motor here that drives the extruder. So here we have a filament detector, and it's quite a large one. So I'm not sure exactly what kind that is, but it's probably an optical one, but we will be able to hear it once we put our filament in. If it clicks, it's mechanical. So below that we have a junction spot over here where all the wires kind of come in and go out. Here we have the X-axis stepper motor, and our X-axis limit switch is inside this box. So if we keep going down, we can see our stepper motors for Z-axis, and there are 2 of them. And then there's this large main cable that comes out and has a really nice looking bracket right here that it holds to the channel. And the cable has this nice braided feel and look to it. Really like this design. So you guys seen already the spool holder. Very cool that it moves in and out, kind of tucks away when you don't need it. So here we have the heated bed. So we do have the ultra base glass, and then we have the aluminum. But underneath the aluminum, we don't have any insulation, so probably not a huge deal for this kind of bed size. But what is awesome is this cable connection here to the bed. It's very robust, and we got like this flexible end here to help absorb movement, because this thing does move back and forth quite a lot. And the cable goes down and into the base of the printer where all the electronics are. So all the channels have these caps at the end of them, so they're not sharp. Very nice touch. We got the same kind of caps here on the top. So here in the back we have the Y-axis motor, and it's all covered here where the pulley is and the end stop switch. So servicing this thing might be a little bit hard if you ever needed to adjust something, but technically shouldn't be too hard, just have to take off this little cover here. So we do have a sticker here that tells us what kind of printer this is, the print size, the wattage, and the weight, which is 9.5 kilograms, which is actually quite a heavy machine. But this thing does have a lot of quality materials on it. All right, and so as we come along this way, we can see that here we have the switch to power on the machine and the power outlet that is fused. And after that, we have the screen. It's a really nice size, and it is a touch screen. And as we go to the front, we can see this is where our drawer is. A little toolbox. And another thing to mention is the Y-axis rail is actually quite wide. That makes the bed a lot more stable. So as you guys saw earlier, we got adjustable pulleys here for the belt tensioning. And over here on this side, we have the SD card insert with also a USB connection. Again, I really like these feet. They're very nice for this printer. Now another thing, guys, if you look under the bed, if you notice, you can't see any kind of adjusting knobs. So there is no knobs to adjust the level of the bed. So it's preset to just one level, so there's no way to go up and down. Now, and the reason for that is because this printer has something quite special, and that is underneath there. So the Hotend itself is the leveling sensor, which is definitely an interesting way to do it, and I'm definitely excited to see how that works. But it is a pressure style sensor, so whenever there's any kind of pressure going on the tip, it feels it and registers it as a switch would. So it looks like we have a little LED over there to one side, and the other side we have the parts cooling fan. And there is a silicone sock around the heat block. And the hot end is all inside this metal housing. Looks like we have a small fan for the heat break. And here, guys, we can see a little better from the back side what the heat break looks like. So it looks like they went with a different cooling design for this CR-6. All right, so for the next part, let's go ahead and power it on and make sure everything works. And I'm pretty excited to see how this out of bed leveling works with the sensor being the tip itself. So that's quite interesting. So I got the cord connected. I'm gonna hit the power button and it powers on. There's a little Creality logo here and a load bar. All right, so loaded, and the fans came on, and you can definitely hear them. They're not crazy loud, but they are on. And so the first thing that jumps out is this beautiful display. So we're gonna take a closer look at that in a second. But before we do anything, let's go ahead and home the machine so we know all of our motors and sensors are working. So I'm gonna click on prepare, move, and home. And it is going X, Y, and now Z is coming down. And by the way, guys, it is ultra quiet. Like, you can't hear it, it's whisper quiet. Only thing you can hear are the fans. And that's a really huge plus because it really eliminates the stepper motor whiny sounds. All right, so the printer homed and everything seems to be working, so that's good. So let's take a closer look at our display, and the home button is actually right in the middle. So let's go back all the way to the home screen. So we got a nice Creality logo. Here we have some main functions: prepare, control, and level. Down here it shows continuously all of our printer status: the hot end temperature, the bed temperature, the speed, and the Z-axis. So we're gonna click print whenever we're ready to print files. And you can see there's nothing there. Prepare is where all of our tools are. We were in the move feed and return. So this is controlling the extruder. Then we have disable steppers, preheat PLA, preheat ABS, and cool down. So let's go ahead and click preheat PLA. That it's going to preheat to is 185 and 45 on the bed. So let's go back while it's preheating. So under control, we got temperature controls, and this is where we can adjust our heating. We can turn the fans on and off. Here we can set up the PLA settings. So if you want to set your custom temperatures, you can do that here. That's really nice that they have that option. We can turn our LED on and off. And as we do that, I'm going to leave it off. So it looks like language is set to English. That's all there is. Then we have restored to factory settings and an info button here. So I guess that's about the machine. All right, and the last thing is level. Now I don't know if I should be doing the level since we just preheated the nozzle and the bed, since it does use the nozzle to level. So let's go ahead and go to prepare and then cool down. So it'll cool off a bit. And after that, I'm going to hit the level button. I just want the nozzle to go down a bit before it, starts poking the bed. And it might be smart enough for that anyways. So let's go ahead and try it, see what it does. So click level. So we have our offset, 0.5 millimeters right now. So the Z-axis offset is what you're going to use to offset your nozzle from the bed, because it's the only control you have. And technically the only control you need. So if you need to go a little closer or a little farther, you will use these in increments of 5. Well, I guess 0.05. So. Alright, so let's click the outer leveling, and it does say to wait for the nozzle to get to 120, so it is smart enough to know not to put a hot nozzle into the bed. I'm really happy to see that kind of attention to detail. Alright, so it is 117 temperature and it's starting to go. Okay, so it actually touches the bed and takes its measurement like that. Really cool. Thinking about this, guys, this might be the best way to do this, because not only will it be always accurate since it's the nozzle, there should be a lot less issues with this kind of leveling compared to something that's external. And we can see there's a little light that blinks inside. Maybe I can get it from this angle here, but you can kind of see the little blue light inside. So every time it pressure senses the bed, it lights up. That's when it knows to go to the next. So it double taps it twice. It's got 1 and then 2, and then it moves to the next one. So it looks like it did all 16 points and it's done. And simple as that, the bed is leveled. So that's really nice and easy. And so far this printer is quite flawless. All right guys, so I'm pretty excited to get the first print started. Let's go ahead and unbox this filament here. Really nice looking spool here. And it's Creality branded PLA, so this should print very well. So let's go ahead and put it on our spool holder, which will go right here. It sits there really good, and there's about 1 inch of room between the bottom and the spool. So after that, we're going to go through the filament detector, and I think, guys, it is a mechanical one because I can hear a little click switch in there, and there's a light here you can see that glows up when the filament's inserted. So after the filament detector, it's going to go into the extruder mechanism. There is quite a small space to work here. It's not tiny, but about the size of my finger, so it could get a little tedious, but not too bad so far. So it looks like when this lever is in like this, it's locked, and to unlock it, I think we'll just do that, and we should be able to push the filament through, and there it goes. Now you could probably use the software to, purge the filament, but I like to go ahead and push it all the way through until it gets down to the nozzle and starts seeping out. Then all we got to do is grab this lever here and release it so the spring inside can push on the pulley that pushes on the filament to the teeth. Alright, and so we got a little bit of filament coming out. So for the next part, let's grab our SD card and insert it into the slot. And it does go in, looks like upside down. And then we're going to click on print, and it looks like we do have a few things to print. So we have something here that says 10 by 10 by 50. So let's try what that is, and we'll see what happens. Alright, there it goes. I'll pop this little guy off here. Alright, there it goes, and it definitely looks like it's too high off the bed. So I'm going to see if I can tune that right on the spot. Okay, it does have Z-axis offset right here. Go down a bit. It doesn't look like that's enough. Okay, 0.25 it looks like is what I needed, and that's about half of what it was, which is 0.5. So since I know I needed to go down, let's go ahead and cancel the print, and we'll have a stop button here. Confirm. So it does move out of the way, looks like. I'll take that right off. So I'm going to go to my level settings and I'm going to set the offset. Well, actually it's already set. So whatever I set it live while it was printing, it left it on that. Okay, well that's good. Whatever you set it to, it always stays on that. Okay, that's great. The same 10 by 10 by 50. I'll get you guys a little bit closer. All right, and there it goes. So I guess this little spatula is good for moving some filament out of the way. And I don't know if you guys saw that, but it literally purged right, or I guess it didn't purge, but it taps the middle and then, you know, it leaves a clunk of PLA right there in the middle where it needs to print, which is kind of interesting. I wonder if it's just for this G code, but we'll see. So the printer is ultra quiet. I'm gonna put the microphone to it. And you literally cannot hear even a hint of those stepper motors. They're ultra quiet. The only thing I can hear is fan noise, and a lot of it's actually coming from the bottom. So there are 4 fans in total, I think, and they're all on, and so the fan noise is definitely prominent. So there, guys, you can see a little bit closer of how it's going. It's building us a little small, I guess 10 by 10 by 50 millimeter cube. So far I can see that we have a little bit of under extrusion for some reason, part of it. But we're gonna let it print and see what happens. But yeah, I definitely see some more of it. Well, that's interesting. So while it's printing that, let's check out what kind of options we have. So first of all, we have the file name up here. Then we have the percentage that it is completed. Then we have tune, pause, and stop. And then we have the same printer information that's always constantly on down here. So if we click on tune, we can see all the things that we can adjust while the printer is printing. So the printing speed, the nozzle temperature, the bed temperature, the Z offset, the fan, and the LED light. I am keeping the light off because it's kind of a little too bright and it'd be hard to film with it being overexposed always. So I'm gonna leave it off on mine. So yeah, some pretty good basic adjustments here. So we can pause the print and we can obviously stop it and that'll cancel the whole thing. So yeah, quite straightforward and easy to understand. All right, so it looks like everything is okay except for I can definitely tell that there is under extrusion. So we're gonna have to figure out exactly what's happening here and why it's under extruding. It's either something in here, because you know this is quite loose and it's going in easily, or it could be in the hot end where the PTFE tubing is not all the way down to the nozzle. But we're definitely gonna need to figure it out because the layers are not coming together as they should be. Alright guys, it's finished and it took 20 minutes to print this thing, and yeah, as you guys can see, it did not turn out good at all actually. So we have some very heavy under extrusion. So something is definitely not right here. It just falls apart. So I'm gonna try to figure out what's going on and hopefully I can get to the bottom of it. Alright guys, so this is what I figured out so far. So apparently our filament is the problem. This print here proves that because I changed the filament to another brand and this thing looks almost perfect. So basically what I did is I printed the first part about to here in 200 and then after that all the way up to here in 185. So we can kind of see the difference between 200 and 185. So there's a very slight difference. Adhesion is very similar. And then on the very top here, you can see just the tip right here from here up. I got it to 220, which is obviously too hot, but it's still printed fine with no issues whatsoever. So the SD card had another model that was the hollow box here, but it was 250 millimeters tall and it's actually printing it without any issue, looks like. So that is very impressive, guys, and I think that just, you know, shows that the ultra base style bed is doing a phenomenal job of holding the print down there so it doesn't wobble up here. You know, quite impressive. So it is getting almost to the finish, and that would be 250 millimeters tall. Very cool. Alright guys, so the adventure continues. I printed a couple other things that were on the SD card, which is this overhang test and this contraption here, which is called negative space on the SD card. And so this is just a tolerance test, and that's what I just printed. And the unfortunate part is that I can see that I have under extrusion, and also on this overhang test I had a little bit of under extrusion also, and you can see it right here on the 60 and specifically just on the 60. So this makes me think that maybe it's not the filament's fault, but the slicing maybe. Of course, that doesn't really explain why our white filament had issues, but not the blue one, especially on this long one that we printed, which is 250 millimeters tall, which is quite amazing. And by the way, the whole way through it was perfect until it got to about right here. I can feel that there's a little bit of wobble, but very surprisingly it still finished the print. And the sidewall, if you guys can see, is excellent. So the printer is extremely accurate, but I'm still having under extrusion problems and I'm trying to figure out why. Now the overhang test did excellent also, as you guys can see. Even on 70 degrees you can see it's very reasonable, and 60 is quite good, and obviously 45 is perfect. So yeah, it looks like you can push this guy pretty hard with overhangs. And on the bottom we can see here there was some lettering, and that turned out pretty good. And you guys can see how easy this comes off. You just pull it and it pops right off. But it hangs on quite well when it's hot, and it's cooling down now. 31C right now, and it was at 45 when printing. So if we look at this thing, we can see how much under extrusion we have. Pretty much everywhere, here and there. But as far as this print is concerned, what we have here is the tolerances, and these are the numbers of the tolerance. So we got 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, and 0.6. So 0.6 being the largest gap, and then 0.2 being the smallest gap. So technically we should be able to pull these out, and it comes right out quite easy. So you guys can see that the 0.2 tolerance is no issue whatsoever, and obviously the rest of them would be also not an issue. So but nice to see that the tolerances are excellent, and honestly I wasn't worried about that because pretty much every Creality printer has excellent tolerance. Alright, so my journey still continues with trying to figure out why I have under extrusion. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to print something that I sliced and see if that affects anything, and if I still have under extrusion I'm going to try a couple other things. I'm going to go to the extruder and check out the mechanism there and make sure everything is as it should be. And I went ahead and already checked the PTF tubing, and it's definitely at the bottom touching the nozzle, so that should not be an issue there. And this fan is running like it should, so everything seems to be fine. So I'm going to print a few other things and we'll see how that goes. Alright guys, so I think I finally resolved my under extrusion problem. So I'm printing this quite large print that's taking a while, and there's no signs of under extrusion, and I'm using the PLA that came with the printer. Basically what I figured out is this extruder mechanism here was the issue. So whatever's going on inside of it was binding, I think, and not putting enough pressure on the filament. So all I did is loosen a few of these bolts here, and all of a sudden everything is solved. Well guys, I think I got ahead of myself and said that there was no under extrusion, and there was on this octopus, but it was quite minimal. So but in any case there still was. So the octopus printed fine and everything is good and quite strong actually, but the issue still persists. Believe it or not guys, I finally figured out what was up, and that just proves that sometimes you got to go with your first intuition, and that is the extruder assembly. After looking into it and how it works, it's quite odd actually. It's not what you would think. The whole top part here moves and the little idler gear is on it. So to make this short, this little small screw right here is what adjusts the tension on the spring inside. So tightening it up all the way tightens the spring all the way. Loosen it will loosen the spring somewhat. And you want to have both of these bolts as loose as possible also, in my opinion. So after that revelation, things are going super good. And I'm printing this astronaut right now, and he is flawless, literally. I don't know if I've ever seen it print this nice. So I'm going to continue printing some more stuff, and then we'll take a closer look at all the prints. Alright guys, so as you can see, I printed quite a few things, and let me just say right off the bat, this printer is awesome. So after figuring out how to tighten the extruder, things just printed flawlessly after that. So let's start with this benchy here. So the benchy turned out quite nice. So this is one of the first prints when I was still trying to figure out the extrusion problem, so there could be a little bit of under extrusion here and there. But if you look at the walls, wow, this is, I mean, just perfection literally. Now there is a seam right here that you can really tell, but with this filament, every imperfection is quite exaggerated. And the cooling is quite good too. The retraction wasn't perfect, that's why you see a little bit of stringing. So I upped it from 6.5 millimeters to 7.5. So just added 1 millimeter, and after that everything was perfect with the other prints. So yeah, very nice. So here we have a calibration cube, also in silky silver. So you guys can really see how the walls look. So the X axis, we can see there's practically no ringing whatsoever. or ghosting or anything. So excellent on the X. And then we have the Y here, and the little dots you see here is actually the nozzle moving away and coming back to another print, because I printed this together with the frog that I'm about to show you. But yeah, as you can see, the Y same way, practically nothing. Here's the Y wall and the X wall. So as you can see, the X is a little bit nicer than the Y, but still guys, this is quite impressive. And the top obviously looks great also. And not to mention the bottoms are perfect because of that bed. So this little froggy was printed together with the calibration cube, and this thing really shows, especially on this silk silver, how great this layer bonding is. It's amazing. And by the way, all of these prints are printed in 0.16 layer height at 50 millimeters a second. So on the frog here, the seam ended up being on his back, so it's quite pronounced. And if you look at his little hands, they just look amazing. An excellent print. So, and as you saw guys, this octopus, and you know, it did have under extrusions, nothing too much to look at here, just okay. And one thing to take away is that the bed does a great job of holding all these pieces when it's printing and then breaking loose when it cools off. All right, the next thing I want to show you guys is this clip. So these two pieces were printed separately. This is a gold, silky gold, I guess, and you can see the quality on it. It's really nice. This printer just does an excellent job. And here's our silver clip. And so you put these pieces together and it becomes a clip, which is really cool. And the way this thing's made, it's got a slit in the middle of it, and it acts like a spring. So it pulls on one end of it, kind of tell right there, to make it bounce back. So very nice. So as you guys can see, printing things like this looks very nice and, you know, quite a lot closer to a finished product. It's worth buying the silky filament for the look itself, and just a lot more pleasant to look at. So I had to print a bearing, and this is also in the silky gold, and the CR6 nailed it in perfection. Literally, as it came off the bed, it was spinning free as it could be. So the tolerances on this printer are just mind-blowing. It's literally perfect on every aspect. So if you're wondering about precision, this printer definitely has it. So I also have this 10 by 10 by 250 cube box that we printed, and I'm still quite amazed because you guys can see that that's the height of it, and I still can't get over the fact that it did such a narrow, tall print. If we look at it up close, you guys can see the quality is just amazing. And on the top, maybe you can see a little bit of wobble. So as it got to the very top, about this much, it was starting to, you know, have too much deviation. All right, so we got two more prints left, and it's one of my two favorite prints to print. I just love the way this Hacker astronaut looks. And then we have the spaceship. And one of the reasons I love to print it is because it's in spiralized mode, so it gives us that test, one layer all the way around. And also it is the maximum height here. So this is almost to the very top, which is I think 248. So let's check out the astronaut first, and I was really blown away by this, guys. Now it is using a silky black filament, that's what it's called, this filament, and it's quite amazing. But in order for it to look amazing, the printer itself has to put these layers down really good, and you guys can see it nailed it. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a better astronaut from all the ones I've printed so far. This one is just out of this world, literally. And we do have the seam in the back. That's why you see these little dots, but other than that, guys, this is a beautiful print, and I'm very happy to report that the CR6 does extremely well in putting the layers down. So the Creality quality lives on. And here on the bottom on the shoes, you guys can see, you know, this is all the surface area we had to stick to the plate, and again, the bed was able to hold this print without popping off. So I haven't popped off the spaceship, so we can kind of see how it comes off. Now I did put some alcohol on here earlier, clean off the surface, because I was feeling like maybe it needed a little better adhesion. So I think it's sticking to the bed quite a bit more than normal. But in any case, the little purge around it came off really easy. And let's see if I can just tuck this guy around. Okay, yeah, so he's breaking loose quite easily. Kind of moving the fins on the sides first. Hopefully I won't break it. Maybe I'll use the spatula to push it. And there goes the flying spaceship. So this thing is very fragile because it's only one layer. There is a bottom with a few layers. I don't know how many, I think 4 or 5, but the rest of it is just one layer. So this thing, you know, it's quite fragile if you push it too hard in the wrong way. And it's ultra light like a feather. But it still came off, even though it came off flying out. We can see the bottom is beautiful. And as far as the walls go, it pretty much doesn't get better than this. So this filament here is called silk bronze, and it's got this nice, I guess, bronze look to it. But yeah, as far as the details are concerned, you guys hopefully can see there is a little bit of artifacts in the print, so it's not like super ultra smooth, but you know, they're quite minimal and you can barely see them technically. So now another thing that's quite hard to print on this spaceship is this tip here, because this is still one layer and it gets thin, and usually the last part about from here ends up melting all together, and the ball ends up melting also. But on this printer, it turned out beautiful. No issues. The ball is perfect pretty much. So yeah, quite impressive for the CR-6 here. So yeah guys, the best way to put this printer is that yes, it does everything that you would expect out of a Creality printer, which is always concentrated on the print quality. And this is what I love about Creality, is that they're able to somehow fine-tune their nozzles and their overall construction where it can produce prints like this. And this printer definitely punches up there as far as quality is concerned. Now a few things I wish they did a little different, which is the extruder mechanism here. I wish they would have just kept the older style all aluminum that they have on their higher end printers. I think that would have been a better one overall, or maybe even a dual gear would have been a better option. But in any case, that seems to work after you know how to adjust it. And another thing is the spool holder. Even though it works fine, it actually tilts, so the spool's always falling that way. And because there's too much slop in the way it is, and because it just clips on, a whole kilogram of spool has a lot of weight and it always wants to lean that way. So it's not a big deal, but I feel like they could have done something a little better there. But other than that, the printer is very solid. The touchscreen here is very responsive. The ultra base style bed, also good, but might not be preferred by everybody. You know, that's kind of a hit and miss. Dual Z-axis rods, that's a huge plus, and they are tethered on top. Filament detection for those long prints, and it does work great. Also power off resume, so if you lose power, you can resume your print. But the only trouble with that is that your print might come off when it cools off. But I haven't really had that issue. As you saw, I mean, this thing is stone cold, and you know, it was still stuck on quite well, so it's probably not that big of a deal. Love the full-size SD card, and funny enough, the best part about it is the auto leveling. So I would normally not like this kind of leveling, but it has been literally perfect the whole time. Since I auto leveled it once, after that it's just been perfect. So I feel like the touch resistance is the way to go for auto bed leveling, and this printer proves that it works and can eliminate the hassle of the whole bed leveling, because a lot of people that come to 3D printing have the bed leveling problem. It's such a fine tune between too low or too high. Most people get it wrong when they're first getting started. So this printer really eliminates that hassle. So yeah, overall super solid printer. Definitely worth the premium, whatever it is, over the Ender Pro, because you get so much more in this package. They really refined this thing to feel premium. So yeah guys, big thumbs up from me, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this video and my little adventure with the extruder. These things happen all the time, and funny enough, whenever there's something new that comes out, sometimes, you know, it takes a little bit to figure out how it works. And in this case, it was my fault that I didn't know how to adjust it. I didn't really see any references in the manual, but I am very bad at looking at manuals. In any case guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, then hit that like button. If you want to pick up a printer like this, and if it's available yet, I'm going to have some links in the description, so check that out. And if you enjoy videos like this, I do a lot of 3D printing stuff on this channel. So if you're not subscribed and you want to see more, then hit that subscribe button. And also go check out my other videos. I have a bunch of 3D printing stuff that you might find interesting. So as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.